What's up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we're coming at you each and every week with a fresh weekend to debrief and effort to send biblical truth. What better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I'm one of the three hosts present here for the episode today. Caleb Pearson joining me, Miss Rose Locke. Rose, how are you?
I'm doing great. 2 weeks in a row, which is super fun.
Keep the streak alive.
Yeah.
I love it. He's also back with us, the man, the myth, Mark Francis. Mark, good to see you, buddy.
I don't know if I've ever sat in this chair before.
It's weird to look left and see you.
It is intimidating. One time I convinced everybody to switch it up, and I had to sit over there, and there is just something about that chair.
There is. We can blame Mark Carey for that. But guys, let's jump into a weekend in review. I mean, it was a Sunday, but glad to have you both here. I mean, with your role in worship and kind of behind-the-scenes stuff and building up to this weekend. Obviously, we were all together. I think Mark Carey called it Fellowship on the Grass instead of F1, 2, or 3, or 4,
he had two
or
options.
F online, or whatever.
He had two options.
Yeah.
His first option was Fellowship on the Grass, but I liked his second option, which was Fellowship outside.
Yeah, that just sounds better.
I liked it.
But we'll see if he even listens to this to learn. That's what we think about it.
And a couple years ago during COVID, we came up with the term fellowship together.
I was trying to remember that term.
Which is meant to unify
graphic.
people together, not for worship, but for just body life experiences. And so movie night or games and activities just to bring people together during COVID. So fellowship together would also be just a appropriate name.
What you're hearing now as a listener is a fly on the wall to every planning meeting that ever happens in the building. Sometimes it all boils down to, what are we going to call this thing?
Yeah, well, sometimes it comes first, sometimes it comes last.
Yeah, it does. So, Mark, let me ask you first. I mean, when did this become a conviction or burden around here to let's get everybody together?
That's a good question.
Summer comes to a close.
Rose has a better answer.
Okay.
I mean, I know exactly what it is, but she loves answering that question.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know who to direct the questions to, right? Because we are a team.
I just know both of you. Somebody's got the answer.
So. I'll just tell you, Mark Carey is really passionate about outside services, and Mark Carey is really passionate about everybody come together, and Mark Carey is really passionate about us having fun together as believers. And I don't know if everybody inside the church knows and understands that, but we inside who do a lot of the planning, we know and understand that about Mark. So it goes clear back. I'm going to say, you have to help me with my years. I think it's 2022. Is that the last time we had an outdoor service?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, when was the 40th?
Well, that was 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
But then we did an outdoor service.
I think 2022.
Yeah, we did another one after it. I mean, the 40th was big for a big celebration,
Yeah.
similar kind of planning.
Right.
But since then, we realized because of COVID and people really enjoyed being outside, that it was just something unique. And it went beyond just kind of an experience and just something fun to do it. But people were really saying, okay, being outdoors is one option where we can meet.
Well, and the problem with the meeting time, I mean, I still haven't finished my story back to 22, but the problem with meeting, and this is a great problem to have, and Mark can answer this part, because once we decide that we want to have a service that everybody's together, then we kind of task Mark with a large part of the implementation. And Mark went on a hunt for a place where 1,100 to 1,300 people can meet together in Winchester. And what's the answer, Mark?
Years ago. Okay. I mean, there's only a few, and if there are any, it's really, really, really expensive. So we realized we have a campus and a property where potentially even up to 1,500 people could easily meet if we created a location for an outdoor worship service. So that stage area just happened to naturally be a little bit of an amphitheater kind of setup, the location. So years ago on that hunt of where could we go as a church, it just naturally landed, why should we leave our property? So anytime an outdoor service comes up of when we can all gather together as one church in one place, in one space, let's just still keep meeting here. So there is a lot of work that goes into behind the scenes to create the environment for an outdoor church service, which is a lot of the planning, but we realized over the years that it's working and we fine-tuned it. So to answer your question, Rose can pick up the story of
2022.
Since 2022, why would we do it again and when would we do it?
Yeah, so Mark Carey, I remember very clearly, Mark Carey after the 2022 outdoor service came back inside. And we had we always have a debrief conversation, and part of our debrief conversation, that particular service, well, we cut streaming from this service. We did not live stream this service because there are 3 computers involved in sending a live stream from this building, and all 3 computers are over here. And so the amount of work that it took for that component itself was a lot of work. And so after that 2022 service, we did a debrief, and Mark was like, we were like, wow, it's a lot of work. We're really tired. It was hard. And Mark was like, but it is worth it. It is valuable. We will do an outside service again. So then came the 23-24 ministry plan? We are. So 22-23 ministry planning period. We did not get a date for an outdoor service in that ministry plan. Right. So it's actually, I'll give a shout out to Brian Weir. Brian Weir said to me, what do you think? Maybe an outdoor service would be nice this summer. What do you think about Memorial Day? And so I went to the team and I said, hey, Brian has this idea, outdoor service Memorial Day 2023. And basically, because we hadn't done our diligence to do the planning well, and it was a little last minute in the request, we said, the powers that be said, no, not 22-23. So then when we wrote this ministry plan, we're in 23-24. When we were writing that ministry plan, I don't like it when they tell me no.
I didn't know any of this. This is so fun.
So when she says there's the worship team, the worship ministry leadership team.
It's a lot of people.
Pull together.
I'm locked into this story. Shout out to Brian Weir, B-Dubs, by the way.
So
okay,
so when the 23-24 ministry plan was being planned, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a sneak peek at the proof before the elders approve it. And again, an outdoor worship service was not in the plan for 23-24. And so I called Mike. I said, Mike, it was really at the end. It was one of the last drafts. I said, I think it would be really good if we could have a 23-24 outdoor worship service. And so we did write it into this year's ministry plan. It was originally supposed to happen Memorial Day weekend and be in May, but there was just a series of it's always God, right? A series of this person can't be here. These key people are going to be out of town.
Graduation,
things
that impact our church body, and
because Vacation Bible School is really close to that weekend, and so
the family camp going out to the Dakotas, and so we know that to pull off something like we just experienced takes not quite follow the star level volunteers, but there's a good amount of people that we need to lean on to make it work.
So does that answer your question?
An outdoor service Rose was the spearhead for it, and because it was not in the spring, we tried to pick the best date in the fall, knowing, hey, weather is always just a potential issue. And so this is the date that we landed on. And again, knowing that schools would have already kicked off, but it's before ministries really are launching, and it was a good kind of happy medium in the middle ground to pull that off. So once we picked that date, then the role of kind of my event coordinating hat kicks in, where we think about all the successes of past outdoor services and all the failures. And so
things like I just said, which what of all the work we did, which work had payoff and which work can we modify?
And so it's great to pull together a team of people to creatively brainstorm what can we do with this day. On one hand, some of the staff would just be like, just do an outdoor service, tell people to show up, worship for an hour and 15 minutes and go home. We could do that. On the other hand, you could argue, well, we have the entire church together in one place, in one location, that rarely happens.
Beyond rare.
I mean, in order to worship, yes, that is the primary purpose of gathering. But then beyond that, how can we encourage fellowship together, all the while teaching an idea of unity, that we are all united because of Christ? And so Mark grasped onto that. And like Rose said, he understands the value of fellowship and doing fun things and being together. And it's kind of a small church vibe of being like, hey, let's just go have a picnic together somewhere. But it takes a lot to pull together a picnic for 1,200 people potentially. and so to carry not just the idea of we just want to do something for fun, but to take the theme of unity and the theme of togetherness, and knowing that it's Christ who's providing that theme and that he is ultimately the reason of why we're gathering together, and to then encourage the body to say, okay, we're all together, how can I get to know one another better? How can I build bridges amongst people in our own church and then even our own community and beyond? And so that was Mark's challenge to us through the sermon, which is then displayed through what happens the rest of the day.
Well, and I think that's what. So I'm so intricately involved in planning the worship services, and if you ever get to talk to me about it directly one-on-one, I'm really passionate about it. I'm passionate about telling a story. I'm passionate about using the art and artists that are part of our body. I'm passionate about the family of God that is called out, the called out church of Fellowship Bible Church. Us understanding who we are as a body, understanding why we exist. Like, I am so passionate about all those things. And so to understand that this service is one of those really key, important opportunities. And I just felt like Mark just did such a great job of nailing it. And the service itself did such a great job of nailing it, because we are brothers and sisters in Christ, and we are the called out church because of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we all share that salvation. It's those, right here in Ephesians 4, it's those 7 things that Mark talked about to us. But we are also Fellowship Bible Church. So there are other churches meeting in our community, and they are part of that one body and one spirit. But there's a reason that we, 1,100 approximately, because who can count, of us on Sunday, are calling this our church home. So what is it that we agree together with that says Fellowship Bible Church will be our church home?
And what makes us unique and called out, and why has God pulled us together? And what has God called in the past 40 plus years our elders to champion, and the mission statement and the core values, and all the things that have been developed. So it boils us down
to the mission statement and the core values. So then we were able to plan a worship service that I felt like just did a really great job of, like, I think it would be hard to leave that service without a pretty good understanding of those 5 core values. I think you could access most of them after that, which is what unites us as this specific, unique body of believers.
What I love to add to that too, as I was thinking about the service, I was thinking about this podcast too, and realizing now I know everybody heard the exact same thing. Because we'll have Mark on, and it's kind of like, oh, well, in this service I said this, or after this service I had a gentleman come up or whatever, and that's all good and great. A lot of people listen to this podcast because they only attend one, and there's so much they miss. But for all of us to be there together, it was informational in a way where you could accomplish almost what a congregational meeting could do, which is everyone deserves to hear this, should hear this. And so,
but in a word, but concentrating on the spiritual.
In the context of a service, I think it was great. And then the biblical backing for it, because that's way deeper than a get to know FBC event or something like. It's not a pamphlet of core values, but it's a study. And so I was thinking about all the new faces. There's a lot of new faces coming here. A lot of young people, young professionals are moving here and getting plugged in. And so I was thinking of them as Mark was speaking. I was like, man, this is cool. I think we're getting the message across to a lot of people who might not know it.
Yeah, and at the same time, you can say, oh, why can't we all get together all the time? But you know, God has called this church to grow in such a way that we've outgrown our building for all the entire church to be present in one place, one time, and that's fine. That's where God has put us, and so we have 4 services, 3 venues, and those opportunities for people to interact with each other, hopefully on a little bit of a smaller basis. I mean, you can imagine if there was 1,200 people every single week, how you really get plugged in? But God has given Fellowship Saturday and Fellowship 3 and the other 2 services upstairs for that potential to continue to get smaller. And we know even those services alone are challenging to get plugged in. And so the call is still, and I think Mark left us with this, how can we try to build this togetherness differently this coming fall? How can we maybe intentionally get smaller, get plugged into a community group, get plugged into a discipleship group?
Serve. I love that call to serve. I'm a task-oriented, many of you know me personally, I'm a task-oriented person, right? I always got something in my hands, always have a to-do list a mile long, not because I have to have a to-do list a mile long, but because I have visions and ideas that I want to make happen. And so for me, service is where I'm going to connect with you best. I meant when I was first here and I would volunteer in the nursery and I would, sign up for this little task and that little task to help in the kitchen for this, to help in the kitchen for that. I met so many people and didn't just meet them, but got to know them in an intimate spiritual way. And to this day, many of those people, I would say they're my closest friends at Fellowship Bible Church, and I don't see them in person that often, but I know that they are part of this body, and that we have that connection because of that.
And Sunday is a picture of that, serving in action, and I get a chance to see it firsthand from the just foundation levels of all the way back to where I was saying there's a creative planning team that had ideas with plenty of things on the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the implementing of like knowing, okay, here's what we're going to try to accomplish, and going to the community groups to say, hey, can your group help us out? To then going to you, Caleb, for Keystone, or also youth ministry, and how can the whole body come together, and then finding more bits and pieces of people to fill in the gaps. And then even the pre-planning, as much pre-planning as it takes to have something be successful and to go smoothly, you see God work in the moment on that day of people stepping up that I hadn't even connected with as the event coordinator to say, hey, can you do this task? They just naturally are doing things. And to see the body who had never really
and
been
it's their
tapped
gifting.
to do that, and
like,
their gifting, yeah.
I know who he's referring to. I won't say a name, but that person really understands and knows that they are gifted in this specific area, and they stepped right up to the area of their gifted, took on a great role. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful picture of the body of Christ. And it would just be, there's so many stories from the planning meeting to, like, I haven't had a chance to send an email, but there were 10 people who said, I will glue together fans. And so the cost of the fans went from, I think it was $800 or some ridiculous price like that, to like, we made 1,000 really cool fans that had our core values on them for like, I don't know, I may have $60 or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but only because the body of Christ stepped up. And what happens is it's a multiplying thing. Like, so what I said to those women when I asked them, they happened to all be women, but what I said to them was, this is an opportunity for your kids to get involved. So it's an opportunity to teach service to the next generation, but it's also an opportunity for you to pray for the people who are going to get those fans. So even in the act of the serving, there is this spiritual teaching and learning. And when you understand these core values, and Fellowship Bible Church also has 5 objectives. So when you understand 5 objectives and 5 core values, then it becomes part of your DNA, and it naturally comes out as you walk. Now you have to tell what the 5 objectives are. So.
Well, but even then, just to see the level of joy that goes into the serving, and even on a hot day of people doing their tasks and jobs, as I'm going around circling with every person, they're just happy to be there, happy to serve, to engage with one another, and to do their role using their gifts in the little pocket that they're called to serve.
There's this really cool book, and I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. The first word is Eshet, but it's a book that's about Proverbs 31. And when I read the book, there was a quote in the book, and the quote talked about, if you see a problem, if you see something that needs to be taken care of, and you sit back, a lot of times we sit back and we think, well, can't everybody see that a word is spelled wrong? Or can't everybody see that door is propped open and shouldn't be? The truth is, no, not everybody sees that. So maybe the fact that you see it is that God is calling you to step into that area and that need. And I think I had a conversation with a couple of our staff, the nursery and preschool staff people. And it was not a sense of, oh, we have to do this because the church is having a service. Rather, it was this. I remember how hard it was to have my preschooler out there during that service. And so I want to free those parents to have that unencumbered worship time and to minister to their families. It really was a really cool thing to watch and see in each of the areas.
Yeah. One thing I told Todd, who's kind of on the Keystone ministry team and going to be helping lead young adult ministry moving forward, was as you're here at this event, you can network and meet some people that you might have not met otherwise.
Right.
Like all these services, right? And as he's stepping up in leadership, or as we're preparing new leaders or whatever it might be, even the youth helping me move the 9 Square thing, like it was just so cool to be exposed to everyone else and have them see, oh, okay, that's what's going on. They're involved. And then it's the local church. It's reminding my Keystone attendees, we are a part of a local church, right? We're not some Thursday night club that happens to rent the basement. No. And then also youth are serving, right? They're not the future church, they're the present church.
Yeah. It's cool to have you develop Todd in that way as a future leader, to have his antenna up.
Yeah.
I'm not just here to receive, but I'm here to also serve and to look and to...
Yeah, so I sent an email to there. We have... The worship ministry has a really deep well of volunteers because we have a choir, we have an orchestra, we have musicians, we have production team members. So we have between 100 and 200 people on our volunteer list. And so I sent an email to that key group of people 2 weeks ago, I think, and I said, hey, look, here's an opportunity for you to be deployed in our body. We need people to walk around, greet people, make sure they have what they need for the service. I said, in my email, I said, we do not want one person to come in the midst of our body this last Sunday and feel alone. Right. We want them to have been engaged. We want to care for them. We want to love them and help them understand that they are part of one body. And people stepped up and they just did an amazing, amazing job. So it was a deployment opportunity for the people who are more ingrained and who are leaders in our body. And it was a wonderful event. I thought I enjoyed it very much.
And good. It all ends where Mark led us in communion. And so to be reminded of, again, circling back, the reason why we're there is to worship God and to be reminded of what he's done for us in the gospel, and to come back to celebrate communion and the togetherness that symbolizes of partaking that together and remembering the body and remembering the blood of what Christ did for us on the cross, and to do that in unison and to do that as one body and to sing together, to respond. You can even tell Mark he doesn't get choked up a lot, but we can maybe be like, hey, Mark, what were you feeling in those moments when you were
I've listened to his sermon twice now. I've listened to his sermon twice now, and I have to tell you, I don't know if I should admit this. I actually mixed the service. I don't usually mix the outdoor service. Again, that was an unusual position for me. In the past, when we've had outdoor services, I've actually been, I'll say, stuck inside because I've been dealing with streaming and
can you explain what you mean by
overlays. Mix? Can I explain what I mean by mix?
So for all sound complaints, you can email Rose.
No, please don't, because I know that right now, I guess we can just call it out. I know that right at this moment, the podcast recording and the online recording don't sound great. The sermon spotlight. So they're not sounding great at this moment. We are working on that behind the scenes.
But I'll tell you that what we've learned over the years of doing outdoor services, having the speakers, having the placement, where the people were, it sounded amazing. So yes.
I heard a lot of good feedback of it.
So that was my that was my role this time, and partly because we just felt like it was really we felt like we haven't done such a great job on that in the past, and so we felt like that was really important. So I took on that role personally. I had a lot of great help. I'm just going to tell you. Anyway, what
we were talking about Mark.
Mark getting choked up. Yep. So I've listened. I did not hear it. I was mixing the service. I was sitting in the middle of the field. And I did not hear him get choked up. But I've listened now to the sermon podcast twice.
It's the bus story, right? Is when he,
Yeah, he got.
Right. Just making sure I got it right.
I'm going to tell you what, when you listen to the recordings, you can just hear the emotional, in his voice when he's talking about that bus story. And I think, we have to ask Mark for sure, but I think what made him emotional about that was that is exactly the example of us being one body with people that we've never met from around the world. And we can look each other in the eye and know we're going to see each other again and have joy in those moments. And that's what we got to do on Sunday.
Well, in that story, I think Mark was also alluding to, hey, I might never see you again. Until we're in glory. Yeah. And so there's something to that we can celebrate, and we take for granted what we have together each and every weekend, and of celebrating with believers. But then to know that, hey, there's a believer who lives halfway around the world who has that perspective of whatever the story was of just kind of potential conflict and I think he was talking about, was it Ethiopia, the country, and how just not unified that country is, and how there's just challenges that believer is facing, that he can say, hey, but one day I'll be
and that's
Lord,
huge, and to be in person to hear him choke up and to hear it. Okay, this is raw and real. What's happening now? And especially since he's not here, I feel more than comfortable saying this. There was another lesson in that story that was not his main point. Mark Carey talked to the bus driver.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be the only one on the bus. Put yourself in his shoes. He's traveling without his wife. He's tired. He's home. He's back. How many of us would just earbuds in? You know,
Yep.
he talked to the bus driver,
Right,
and
and
because he did, the Lord did something there, and obviously that wasn't his point. He would never inflate himself like that. And I'm not trying to inflate him now,
Well,
other than to
can
say
I
that
throw
was
another application. In
yeah,
there
but
too?
just 1 second,
Yeah.
like it was convicting for me personally because I was like, that's not the point of what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
But how cool is it that the start of his story was. So obviously I talked to the bus driver because the Lord had us one-on-one in an enclosed space, but I don't know how many believers think like that, and the Lord did something so cool with it.
Well, and how many believers, for me, the application, so same story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, and I'm looking forward to Glory as much as anybody, and I appreciated his emotionalism, but for me, the application was how many of us can just like quote at the bus driver
Right.
scriptures
Yeah,
from Jeremiah. Right?
Mhm, right.
And so I
Yep.
went, okay, Mark's a pastor. You know, part of me is like, I'm going to say Mark's a pastor and he has all the time in the world to study these things. But the other part of me said, wait a minute. You have just
the
as
right
much
to, yeah.
access to God's word as Mark Carey
That's
does.
good.
And you do not have that scripture hidden in your heart that you can like reach it that quickly. So that, to me, that was another application from that same story that Mark did not pull out.
Yeah. And it's just a reminder, too, that God is the one that's uniting, right? For FBC to make the decision, we're going to have one outdoor service. That isn't what unites us. It's Jesus that unites us, and we had the avenue to do that and the possibility to do it outside. And so I thought that stood out this week, and I was very encouraged by it. Heard a lot of good feedback from people. So
Yeah. So I'm sitting in this chair, and this is like a cutting room floor chair.
Yes.
So
it's good.
let me give you some of the top
give
ideas.
me some
that didn't
what didn't make the
happen.
cut? This is
Okay.
good. This is good. Give me the well, I don't want to offend anybody. Give me the weirdest one.
So we knew that we're coming off the Olympics, right? We thought that we could have, over the several weeks leading up to this, have some torch that we could have been representing one of those P's that you were alluding to, which is pass the torch, to lead up to maybe even having like somebody like Mark Carey run into
From 37.
the stage
just up over
with a
over the
torch.
bridge.
And then have games and relay races afterwards that were symbolizing the Olympics. So that was one of the
Yeah.
creative ideas
Love
of what
it.
the day could have been.
Yeah. 4 years from now, somebody remind us.
Yeah, there were others. I mean, so the colored fans stuck.
They
Like
made
having
it.
a color-coded scheme of
Sure.
the idea of knowing that we need to feed people quickly, we need to get them, not wait in line long, and have multiple stations, which then we were like 5 stations, 5 core values.
And that was like
Color-coded
200
and
hot
fans.
dogs. Not so
We can
hard
all
to
do
grill.
that.
Yeah.
So that actually stuck. That didn't make the cutting room floor. But those are some of the creative ideas.
What
that
about,
happened.
you didn't say the pony rides?
The pony rides? I was getting there.
He doesn't want to disappoint all of our listeners.
Pony, children, like a parade. Have the children
Pony
gather together either before or after or even during the service and march around the congregation in a way that they could bring just their instruments and noisemakers and signs that could be a scripture that could encourage the body, have just kids do a parade around. That was one of the ideas.
We cut that because it was too much work for the parents.
Well,
so
what
the parents
happened
weren't
was
listening.
Yeah. You know what happened in your meeting when someone suggested that? Somebody else said nay.
They're like, no way. I don't. As a parent, I don't want to do
It wasn't
that.
me. I don't ever say no to creativity. The bigger, the more exciting the project, the more I'm all over it.
Yeah. Then others were, let's just have an all-day thing and stick around and have like movie at nighttime when it gets dark.
Party never ends.
Party never ends. The food truck concept is always a big idea, but never easy or good idea to implement. Have a variety of food options to represent things from around the world. There, you go down the list of
Live music.
more music during the
Interesting,
morning
yeah.
time or afternoon time. More carnival-like games, so we whittled it down to just 3 bounce houses. Relay races were on there, like a tug of war between community groups.
Well,
potentially.
We
yeah.
cut the cakewalk too.
There's
Yep.
Yeah. On behalf of the people, let me just say, y'all nailed it. I appreciate the work so many people put into it. I was happy to be recruited as help, but I know, your team got there at what, 5 a.m. dark 30
Yeah,
basically.
my team
so.
came. Well,
Yeah.
we set a lot of stuff up on Thursday and then put it away and then came at 5. If we had not done that, we would have had to come.
Even earlier. Yeah.
it's challenging because we don't want to blast the neighbors too early with sound and noise.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Good stuff, gang.
We can keep talking.
Yeah.
But
I know. And thanks to everybody that was a part of it. If you missed it, you can find a way to find that online. And if you weren't there, we miss you. So come next weekend, and we look forward to that. Anything we want to point people towards?
Just
Mark,
so many
before we...
new fall kickoffs of things. So Biblical Training Center classes are starting up in a couple weeks. Look out for what those are online. Women in the Word kick off in a couple weeks. Seniors have their thing. Keystone continues to meet on Thursday nights. There's a family meal that's going to happen September 8th in a couple of weeks after the service. So if you are a parent of kids ages 0 through elementary school, come out to just engage with more fellowship together with some food after the service. The list goes on. So the website has all of those details.
There are some non-event things people might want to be aware of. I'll just poke them a little bit too. We are going to be taking communion every Sunday moving forward
for this series
through the end of December, because Mark is starting a new series, not this week, but next on Christology. And I think the other thing is this Sunday, I think this is really important. This Sunday, we're going to kind of hit the value of loving the world. And so this Sunday, we're going to get to hear from our local outreach people. We're going to get to hear from our missions people. And there's some really exciting things happening in those areas. So from a spiritual content. Also, we are publishing, in case you haven't heard, we are publishing an Advent devotional. And September 1st is our deadline to let people know if there are things that will be included or not. If you had something that you were considering, we still have a couple spaces in the Advent devotional that we can.
People could submit stuff.
People could submit stuff. And that is coming, that will be published at the beginning of December. I'm really excited about it, guys. It's an opportunity for our artists to worship God by the way he's gifted them. And it's been really fun to get submissions from people that I just didn't even expect. And they're beautiful. Everything I've read is just beautiful. So
it's awesome. I will plug quickly too, as the ministry plan, new year kind of starts, great opportunity to get plugged in and serve too. Volunteers always welcome. You can always jump in to serve, but speaking at least on behalf of youth ministry and our other pastors, it can be easier to get plugged into a ministry end of August, early September as things are kicking off or kids are moving up and all that good stuff. So reach out to us if you're interested in serving.
Yep.
Mark, thanks for being here, dude.
You got it, man.
Love you very much. Rose, you rock.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. For all our listeners and viewers, remember that we love to hear from you. You can find us at fbcva.org/podcast. The fact of the matter, everybody, is that sermons are not meant to just take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love. God bless.